Right, so peace in the Middle East just went clean out of the window in my view, following Israel's latest example of what I can only describe as abject insanity, frankly. After having targeted an Iranian embassy in Syria resulted in a feared Iranian response several months ago, as we remember, the first time Iran has directly attacked Israel came in the aftermath, rather than via its allies in Yemen's Houthis or Hezbollah in Lebanon, for example, which actually was less severe than many expected. But now Israel has struck Iran again, this time directly. A guided missile straight into the residence of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in the Iranian capital of Tehran. That Israel are capable of such targeted strikes should put their decimation of Gaza in some context. But even this egregious and escalatory act is not the only one we've seen in recent days. Yesterday, Israel mounted a direct strike upon the Lebanese city of Beirut, where it claims to have killed a senior Hezbollah commander as well. They are increasing their aggression against Hamas, detonating any chance of peace, and the same goes for Hezbollah. They've instigated this, they're ramping things up, they're inviting repercussions which will certainly come. What is their strategy? Because it's complete madness, and has someone come to save them now? And it seems obvious to me that Netanyahu has put his entire nation at risk for the sake of forcing the US to come to his aid. It's just the latest escalation in Netanyahu desperately trying to keep himself in power, but frankly proves more than ever he needs removing from it. Right, so let's take this attack on Iranian soil first and foremost, because this is as serious as it gets. This is arguably the biggest escalation we've seen from Israel since the events of October 7th took place. Iran simply does not let things like this slide, and we know that. We saw their reaction several months ago when Israel targeted their embassy in Damascus. But now Israel has made a strike directly on Iranian soil and assassinated Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh there, head of the Hamas political bureau. Hamas being the elected government of Gaza. They have such a thing, after all. Why Haniyeh, though? Certainly this isn't the route to peace, and in no small part is that due to the fact Haniyeh was widely viewed as a moderate voice within Hamas. For example, following the 2006 elections which delivered Hamas to power in Gaza, the fact no elections have been held since notwithstanding, Haniyeh sent a letter to the US President George Bush asking for him to meet and enter negotiations with his elected government, where he offered a long-term truce with Israel whilst accepting a Palestinian state based on 1967 borders and end the international boycott, claiming if it were to continue it would lead to violence and chaos. This is the sort of thing you'd imagine a US politician would jump at, wouldn't you? But the US ignored him. So we can only wonder what difference could have made back then, don't we? Here's an excerpt from Al Jazeera's coverage explaining the repercussions, though. Reporting from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza, Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud said the killing was significant for the people of Gaza because he was leading negotiations that they hoped would lead to a ceasefire. Palestinians across Gaza and the West Bank also view Ismail Haniyeh as a moderate leader, who is much more pragmatic compared to other leaders who head the military side of the movement, Mahmoud said. He's very popular here. He grew up in a refugee camp. He represents the vast majority of the people who are the descendants of the refugee families who were displaced from the Palestinian territories in 1948. Many worry that Haniyeh's killing could now lead to a further escalation of the conflict, he added. Haniyeh was the negotiator. He was the politician here. He wasn't the military wing. So by taking out the political head of Hamas, it leaves pretty much only the military. Any hope of sensible ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas probably just died with him, in all probability then. That is what this strike was meant to achieve, though. An end to negotiations, which Netanyahu has, of course, blocked and scuppered for the last certainly 7 months when the negotiations have been taking place. An end to the war is the last thing he wants, as it risks his own position and his own grip on power. But where Haniyeh was arguably the sensible, rational head in the upper echelons of the Hamas movement, his removal will likely see a lurch towards more conflict. But equally, you could see repercussions from Iran now too. Haniyeh was there as a guest to attend the inauguration of Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, following the death of his predecessor Ebrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash back in May. As you can imagine, Iran haven't taken this news well. As Euronews, amongst other outlets, have indicated, the word revenge quite prevalent across many articles today. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has sworn revenge on Israel over the killing of Hamas's political chief in a shock assassination that risks escalating the conflict. Khamenei said Israel prepared a harsh punishment for itself after Ismail Haniyeh was killed in a pre-dawn airstrike in the Iranian capital Tehran on Wednesday. We consider his revenge as our duty, Khamenei said in a statement on his official website, saying Haniyeh was a dear guest in our home. His comments came after Hamas put the blame for the attack firmly at the feet of Israel. So another strike by Iran on Israel on the way. Who'd rule against it? We watched it happen before, just a few months ago. And this time, with the attack happening literally in Iran's capital itself, I can quite conceivably see the repercussions this time being more severe than they were before. All of this, of course, came a day after Israel struck Beirut, a city in Lebanon home to more than 2 million people. This again was claimed to be a precision strike to take out a Hezbollah leader, Fuad Shukr, a senior member of Hezbollah's military council, and who Israel claimed was killed in their strike. But Hezbollah have reported that he is still alive. That actual firm confirmation of this is yet to come out that I've seen for sure. 3 civilians were definitely killed, however, along with a further 74 injuries. Such as what happens is hardly surprising when you consider that Beirut is one of the most densely populated areas in the whole of Lebanon. This strike was allegedly in response to the rocket attack on a football match in the Druze community of Majd al-Shams in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The eyewitnesses to that event say the rocket came from an Israeli Iron Dome defense system battery. So this revenge attack on Beirut by Israel, like most things instigated by the Israeli military or government, is taken with a large pinch of salt as well. Ultimately, these further attacks on Hamas and Hezbollah leaders, even going so far as to strike major civilian areas in Lebanon and Iran, and indeed just to strike on Iranian soil itself, are massive escalations at a time when most of the world wants to see peace talks succeed instead. But a wider war, a bigger conflict, is what Netanyahu clearly wants. Israel has maintained silence over the latest strikes, but frankly nothing they say is going to make matters much worse, I can't imagine. By escalating matters as they are now, Netanyahu is desperately trying to drag the US into the frame. What has happened overnight and yesterday have been deliberate acts of war, a war Israel is incapable of winning, as it's got too many enemies on too many fronts now. So they figure the West, the US, will always do what is necessary to bail them out. There's a reason people say Israel is the only nation on earth that can get away with committing terrible atrocities against other people and other nations, and yet still be able to claim they are the ones who are the victims. They are fighting in Gaza. They are breaking international law across Palestine. Their occupation of Palestine has just been ruled illegal. Their occupation of the Syrian territory of the Golan Heights has never been lawful. And so now we see Israel being attacked by Hamas, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Syria, the Houthis in Yemen, Iraq via Islamic State. Iran will almost certainly respond directly again now. Just how many fronts does Israel think it can fight a war on? Doesn't seem to matter, because it really is all about what Netanyahu seems to want. Frankly, the US would be fools and would be knowingly breaching international law themselves if they put boots on the ground to help Israel after everything they've done, after everything they are accused of and being investigated for. Biden is probably stupid enough to do it. I couldn't possibly bet against him doing so, nor in all likelihood whoever follows him into power. The US has practically legislated backing Israel come what may, and turned criticism of it into a crime. Frankly, if we thought things were bad before, things are probably going to get dramatically worse. And if the US does or does not get involved, there is a belief amongst some that they already are. For example, the Houthis in Yemen have issued a statement in light of the strikes in Lebanon and Iran by saying, Netanyahu returned from America with a green light for assassinations. America is involved in everything that is happening and must pay the price. Again, statements like that also do not help matters. Others saying similar sentiments have been issued by other groups as well, Hamas and Hezbollah certainly. We're now probably further away now from peace than we ever have been. But none of this should necessarily come as a surprise because, as I've said before, there can be no peace whilst Netanyahu remains in power because he simply doesn't want it. He can't afford it. And without any will to clamp down meaningfully on Israel, cut off its military aid completely, sanction them, full BDS, and until that happens, without meaningful inroads in that direction being taken, I fear for what we're going to likely witness next. Israel are reliant on foreign help at this point, the likes of the US stepping in no small part because their economy, whilst they widen their warfare, is tanking. They need saving from themselves at this point. Get the details of Israel's financial calamity, the nation that cannot be allowed to fail, and the repercussions of that in this video recommendation here, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.